Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Undrunken podcast. I'm your host, Courtney, and each week we talk real life beyond the bottle. What it means to dump the drink, live life fully, freely, and undrunken. Let's get into it. What's up, y'all? It is that time of year that just hits different. We've got short days and dark nights and a lot of joyfulness and pretend joyfulness, but underneath, a lot of us are feeling heavier, lonelier, and more disconnected. Myself being one of them. And here in the Pacific Northwest, it gets dark at 4 p.m. and it's rainy for months. And when you're choosing to stay dry or undrunken, it can almost feel like a full-time job. So today we're talking about the one thing that keeps more people undrunken than anything else. And I know this after interviewing over 50 people. It's connection. So let's break it down. Let's start with why this season feels heavy. There's the environmental reality. It's Pacific Northwest winters, especially, well, maybe not for some of you, but here it's Pacific Northwest winters that are full of just darkness and rain and some isolation. And that low sunlight equals low dopamine and low vitamin D. So moods naturally dip. So I think it's important to recognize that, hey, it's not you, it's biology, right? You know, the other reason I think this season feels, heavy is there's this emotional and cultural pressure as like holidays stir up, right? So you've got family stress, maybe some grief over people who aren't with you, loneliness if you don't have family or friends around you, reflection, regret. There's social drinking everywhere. And there's this hallmark joy, expectations versus reality. We've talked about it over the last couple weeks, whether you're going to events or hosting events, right? Like, y- it, let's normalize it. If you're dry right now, that's not a weakness. You're actually seeing things more clearly. You're recognizing some of those emotional and cultural pressures. So they might hit a little heavier. But here's the thing, and here's why connection is important. When you're disconnected, you're going to crave comfort. You're going to want relief. You're going to be looking for a shortcut to, quote, feeling okay. And alcohol specifically pretends to offer that, but it's temporary. It's fake connection. Most people don't drink for alcohol, they drink for that feeling. And here's why connection is the real antidote. Real connection regulates the nervous system. Your body literally relaxes around safety, okay? Around safe people, safe environments. Connection's going to lower your cravings. It feeling seen make urges drop, right? Connection gives purpose. Dry living gets easier when you're not doing it in a vacuum. And connection brings joy back. Laughing, belonging, feeling without numbing. That's why it's an antidote, right? That's why so many successful programs at the heart are about connection and sharing. And so, what does connection actually look like outside of a structured program? You know, there could be micro connections, right? So, think daily check in texts or voice memos, or even just sending a meme, chatting with your barista, heck, waving at a neighbor, right? Like, those are just micro connections. And then there's the bigger community connections. So you got fitness classes or craft nights, book clubs. I mean, I know a few of my guests have talked about they read so much more now without alcohol in their lives. Volunteering, any sort of local meetup, that community. just being out in around people, you know. And then there's content connection, and that's huge for me, as you know, here with Undrunken. Podcasts, not just the Undrunken podcast. Like, go back and listen to what some of the folks recommend as resources that helped them before Undrunken was around, the other podcasts. Look for story based reels. Your social media can create connection and it can disconnect you. But if you're intentional with it, you can find great resources that make you feel like you're not alone. Audiobooks, things that listening to people's stories and grabbing nuggets of gold, like, oh, I went through that too. Voices that echo your own, like that. Consuming connection is connection. And then, of course, I think the most important is that self connection. And this is so much easier, maybe even only true when there's not alcohol involved, right? Those abilities to really ground your nervous system. And you've got, of course, you've got journaling and breath work and therapy, going on a nature walk, journaling. Um, did I say that twice? Just a morning check in with yourself. Like, just because you're not drinking doesn't mean you're alone. It's just more honest. You know, I I read somewhere once that you're not alone, you're on your own, but you don't have to do it alone. And I hope I am saying that right. I'll have to do some research and I'll post on the Instagram for that. Here's the reality, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. You've got a seasonal depression that spikes, right? This rain that creates isolation, especially these big storms and floods we've seen. Staying inside becomes a lifestyle. Cozy season culturally is drinking season, and that darkness amplifies everything. You know, Warmth feels harder to access. You know, it's in the Pacific Northwest, staying undrunken isn't just a choice. It is an act of self-preservation. You know, so here's what I want to encourage everybody to do that's listening. I invite you to listen weekly, connect weekly. Join me on the podcast. Send me stories, send me voice memos. Go participate in a challenge. Reach out to someone that you miss. Share an episode to connect with somebody. Connection's important. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't want to do this season alone, I've got you. Okay. So on December 15th, I'm going to launch a Dry January group. And this is for connection and support. I'm going to do weekly check ins, and it's going to be a community of folks choosing to feel good heading into the new year. So, whether you've been undrunken for a while or you're just curious, you all belong here. It starts January 1, but doors are going to open December 15th, okay? So if you want support and accountability and a place to land this winter, join us. Let's do it together. You're not alone because connection is the thing that keeps us all going. So let's build connection. You know, you don't stay undrunken by being perfect. You stay undrunken by staying connected, especially now, especially here, especially in this season. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. You can tag me on Instagram at Undrunken Podcast. I love hearing from you. Take care of yourself and keep making good choices.